Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. My name is James and I am 51 years old. If you had asked me a month ago, I would not have hesitated to say that I had a great marriage. But now, I don't know how to describe my life. My wife Olivia and I met in college. She was 19 and I was 21, young and eager for the future. We fell in love, dated, and eventually joined hands in marriage. To date, we have lived together for 29 years, 26 of them as husband and wife. We have two children, a 24-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter, both of whom are grown up and starting their own journeys in life. Olivia is an accomplished physician and has now been promoted to director of the city hospital. I, on the other hand, started a small construction company after college, and after years of hard work, the company now employs 75 people. We have both done well in our respective fields and have always supported each other's careers. Looking back, our married life seems to have been amicable. We would do a lot of things together and communicate a lot. While sex may not be as frequent as when you were younger, it is still passionate. Since the new crown epidemic, Olivia has started working from home more often. We've also discussed me taking a gradual break from the day-to-day operations of the company, while she considers moving to a part-time job so that we can spend more time together, especially now that the kids are on their own and we can travel together. However, reality is often harsher than we think. It was a normal afternoon when I decided to surprise Olivia. I left work early from the office and planned to take her to a romantic cottage in the countryside for the weekend to celebrate our anniversary. As I drove into the driveway in front of my house, an unfamiliar car parked there caught my attention. Suddenly, a sense of foreboding came over me. I don't know why, but my gut tells me something's wrong. I sat in my car, hoping it was just me being paranoid, but deep down, I knew things might not be simple. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to act. Is it time to leave and talk to Olivia afterward? Or do you pretend you didn't see anything? I found myself shaking and could barely see what was in front of me. When faced with tricky tasks at work, I always tell myself to face them bravely and solve them as soon as possible. Suddenly, my trembling stopped and a strange sense of calmness enveloped me. Though still reeling inside, I decided to face what was coming. I quietly entered the room through the back door. Jack, our Labrador, was lying there looking a little frustrated and seemed to sense that something was wrong. Usually he was always excited to greet me, but this time it was uncharacteristic. I gingerly made my way up the stairs, and as I approached the bedroom, the sounds coming from inside confirmed my worst suspicions. I pushed open the door, and the sight before me struck me like a thunderbolt. Olivia's boss, Oliver, the head doctor at the hospital, was on top of my wife. I froze there for a few seconds before shouting, "Surprise!" The scene that follows is laughable, if it weren't so heartbreaking. Oliver rolls off the bed in a panic and tries to escape, but gets tangled in the sheets. Olivia kept screaming, "Oh my God," while trying to cover herself with the sheet, but she couldn't because Oliver was still tangled up in it. Eventually, Oliver manages to get rid of the sheets and starts looking for his clothes, but they're on the other side of the bed. Somehow, I got the clothes before he did. Olivia kept crying and repeating, "I'm sorry," over and over again. I backed up to the doorway, dragged a large armchair from the corner, and sat down. Oliver stood naked next to the bed and asked me for his clothes. I refused, tossing him Olivia's bathrobe that was hanging on the back of the door. When he tried to approach me, I warned, "If you take one step closer, the outcome will not be good for either of us. You'll end up in the hospital and I'll end up in jail. So why don't you just sit down?" Olivia's cries abated a bit, and she sat up. After a moment of silence, Oliver asked, "What next?" I replied, "Honestly, I don't know." Olivia's crying almost stopped as I pulled out my cell phone and said, "You two are going to tell me everything now. I want a recording." They exchanged glances and Olivia asked, "What do you mean by everything?" I snapped, "Just literally everything. How it started, how long it lasted, where it was, whether or not they stayed in a hotel, whether or not they had dinner together, all the details." Olivia insisted that this was only the first time, and I immediately chided her. Nonsense. If this was the first time, there is no way you would be so comfortable doing this in our bed. If you lie to me again, I'm walking out this door right now and going straight to a divorce attorney. She broke down and cried again. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, the truth finally surfaced. This betrayal has been going on for over 9 months. It all starts with Oliver flirting with her, then he invites her to lunch and she accepts. After a few drinks, they went to the hotel. That night, she came home as if nothing had happened. She insisted that the incident had been tormenting her and that she wanted to confess, but didn't know how to talk about it. Again, I rebuked her. If this was really causing you so much pain, you wouldn't be continuing with such ease and comfort. They even attended a week-long work conference together, a conference I used to accompany her to. She told me the company policy had changed and no longer allowed spouses to participate. I put my cell phone away and the room falls silent again. Suddenly, I had an idea. I rummaged through Oliver's clothes, find his cell phone, and ask him to tell me the password. To my surprise, he told me. I started browsing his cell phone and found some pictures that I guessed were of his wife. I asked, "What's her name?" "Sarah," he replied. I have to admit, Sarah is pretty, though not as moving as my Olivia. I continued to browse and found more photos, among them the children's. Turns out he has 3 kids. Finally, I saw a family photo. I held up my cell phone to him and said, "What a wonderful family. Why risk losing it all for a moment's pleasure with my wife?" Confused, he asked, "What do you mean?" I replied, "Did you really think Sarah wouldn't find out? How would she know?" He protested as he stood up. I said, "Because I'm going to call her right now." Olivia screamed, "Please, don't do this to him." I roared, "Don't do this to him? You two have ruined me, our family, our circle of friends, our future, and my heart. And now you're worried about his feelings?" I started shaking, trying to keep the tears from falling, but I couldn't control them any longer. I slumped in my chair and began to cry. Olivia tries to get closer to me, but I glare at her and command, "Don't come near me." After a moment, I regained control of my emotions and looked at Oliver's phone again. Again he pleaded, "Please, I promise I'll tell her." "Of course you will," I said sarcastically. When I found Sarah's number, I decided to go with a video call for more impact. When she got through, she asked suspiciously, "Who is this? Is my husband okay?" "He's okay for now, but things are going to change soon," I said, turning the camera to Oliver in my wife's bathrobe. "I think you recognize this man. The room he's in right now is my bedroom, and the fancy bathrobe he's wearing belongs to this lady." I turned the camera back to Olivia, who was trying to hide under the sheet. "This is my wife. I came home early today and found them in our bed. I sincerely feel bad for Sarah, and I regret that I was so cruel to tell her the truth." She starts to cry and Oliver tries to explain, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I can explain. It was just an accident." I advised Sarah not to believe anything he said. This has been going on for over 9 months. I just spent 15 minutes recording all the details they were willing to reveal. I assured her that I would text her my contact information and ask her to send me her email address so I could forward the video to her. I give Oliver his cell phone back and hear Sarah warn him that his luggage will be waiting for him outside when he gets home and that she will call the police if he tries to enter the house. After Sarah hung up, I threw Oliver's clothes at him and he dressed and left. Now, it's just me and Olivia. She looked at me and tearfully kept apologizing. She said she never meant to hurt me and asked if I could forgive her, saying it all meant nothing. I listened to the typical cheater excuses and just stared at her before ordering her to pack up and leave my house. I went downstairs and poured myself a glass of wine. As I sat on the couch, Olivia came downstairs dragging her bags. She started toward me and I ordered, "Stop." She asked if we could talk about it and I replied, maybe, but not now." I told her that right now I'm having a hard time resisting the urge to go to a divorce attorney. She started crying again. She looked at me and I could tell she wanted to say, "I love you," but I cut her off. "Don't say those words. Not now, because I don't think I'll ever believe those words again." More tears slid down her face as she turned and walked out the door. Watching her leave, it was as if my whole world left with her. I broke down and collapsed to the floor, shaking and crying uncontrollably. I don't know how long it took, but I was finally able to sit up, though the tears were still flowing. I picked up my cell phone and dialed my best friend Daniel's number. I tried to speak, but once again the tears welled up and I couldn't speak. He asked me what was wrong, but I couldn't answer. He asked me if I was home. I barely managed to get out an and he assured me he'd be right there. Half an hour later, Daniel was standing in my living room. I'm still crying. I handed him my cell phone, which showed the video. He started watching and I couldn't stand to hear that content again. So I went and poured us both a glass of wine. Daniel walks into the kitchen, takes my wine glass, and pours both glasses down the sink. It doesn't help you, he said. He insisted I couldn't stay here alone tonight and told me to go upstairs and pack a bag. When I came back downstairs, he had Jack on a leash and we went to his house together. I didn't say a word on the way to his house while Daniel grew angry. When we arrived at his house, he walked in and asked his wife, Terry, "You know what?" Confused, Terry replied, "No, what's wrong?" Daniel raised his voice and asked again, "You know what?" I interjected, "Calm down. It's not her fault." Daniel realizes he overreacted, apologizes to Terry, and gives her a hug. Terry was now totally confused and Daniel handed her my cell phone and said, "Show her." I took Jack out for a walk, not wanting to hear all that again. By the time we got back, Terry was walking toward me with tears in his eyes and giving me a long, comforting hug. She took my hand and we went back inside. For the next hour or so, the three of us talked and cried and talked. Meanwhile, my cell phone kept ringing. No doubt it was Olivia. I ignored the calls and deleted all the texts without even looking at them. Then my son William called. Curious, he asked what had happened. He said his mom was at his house, claiming I kicked her out. I asked him, "Did she tell you why?" He said no. I told him, "Give her the phone. She needs to explain." He asked why, and I said if she didn't explain, I'd send him the video. Then I hung up. About 10 minutes later, William called again, this time crying. All he could say was a broken, "Oh my God." I immediately shifted from sadness to a comforting fatherly role, telling him that everything was going to be okay and that it wasn't his fault. When he calmed down, he asked me if I was okay, and with tears in my eyes, I replied, "Of course not." He finally told me that his mom would be staying at his place tonight, and then quickly ended the call. My phone rang again. This time it was my daughter Emma. I just remembered that I had asked her to watch Jack for the weekend because we were going out. She asked where Jack was. I told her there'd been a change of plans, that we weren't going out, but that she could stay home and that neither her mom nor I would be home tonight. She pressed, "What does that mean? Neither of you are going home? Where are you?" I told her I was at Daniel and Terry's, and her mom was at William's. She insisted, "Daddy, what's going on? Tell me." I replied, "I can't talk about it now. Tomorrow I'll come to the house and we can talk." She continued to ask questions, but I refused to answer. Finally, she gave up and ended the call. I know exactly where the next call will be. I sent William a text message, alerting him that he might get a call. Then I called Olivia and asked her if she was ready to confess everything to our daughter, or if she wanted me to do it. She just couldn't stop crying. I hung up, and half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. Daniel opens the door and lets Emma in. When she saw me crying, she rushed over to me and hugged me so tightly that we both broke down. She didn't know why we were crying, but we just hugged each other. Once we calmed down a bit, I called Olivia again, told her Emma was here, and asked her again if she was ready to come clean, or if she wanted me to do the talking. Emma asked her mom what she wanted to confess, but there was only more crying on the other end of the line. I decided to say it myself. I hung up without giving any details. Then I blurted out the bombshell. "I found out today that your mom's been cheating on me for 9 months. Just when I thought I had reached the limit of my pain, seeing the look of hurt on my little girl's face brought me to my knees in an instant." She was too shocked to speak and was shaking. I sat paralyzed on the floor, once again a weeping clay figure, unable to move. I feel like I let her down when she needed me most. Terry ran over to her with tears in his eyes, reassuring her that everything would be okay in the end. Daniel was in tears too, and as I mentioned, our families are very close. Emma finally let out a heartbreaking cry, and I know that even if I live to be 100 years old, that sound will haunt me forever. I finally got up the courage to stand up and hug them both. We all ended up huddled on the couch, speechless for a while. I asked Emma if she was going to be okay, and she looked at me and said, "Daddy, don't worry about me. Are you okay?" I barely managed to get out, I'll get over it. She asked if she could take Jack home, and if her fiancé Tim could come and stay as well. I certainly agree. I'm glad she doesn't have to be alone. After Emma left, Terry was furious. She said, "I couldn't believe she would do that," and then started cursing Olivia with all sorts of nasty words. After she calms down, she picks up her cell phone and says she's going to call Olivia. She looked at me as if she was waiting for me to stop her. I said, "Go ahead, but put it on speakerphone." So she called, and at first it was small talk. Finally, she tells Olivia that James called Daniel in tears, and now I live here. She said she knew everything. More crying again. Terry started yelling into the phone. "What were you thinking? How could you? Why didn't you talk to me before you went down this road? If you think there's something wrong with married life, why don't you talk to James? You know how understanding he is. Do you realize how many people you've hurt?" Emma just left here, and I can't even describe the look on her face when James told her the truth. "Dan and I will never look at you the same way again. How could you be so selfish?" More sobbing came from the other end of the line, and Olivia kept saying how sorry she was. Terry didn't hang up, just listened to her cry. After a while, I asked Terry to hand me the phone. "Olivia?" No answer. I called out again, "Olivia?" She finally replied, "Yes, dear." I snapped, "You've lost the right to call me that name." More crying again. I continued, "I just want to know why you're really sorry. If I hadn't come home early, would you have realized how serious your behavior was? Or will you continue to sleep with your boss when we get back from our trip?" More cries came. "You're not really sorry for all the people you hurt, including your boss's family. You're just sorry that you got caught." After that, I hung up. Daniel, Terry, and I chatted for a while longer, while my cell phone continued to ring and ring. I finally tried to sleep, but it was difficult all night. The next morning, I asked Daniel to drive me home. I gave Terry a hug and told them both how much they meant to me. I told Daniel I was going to go to my cabin for some quiet time. He agreed that it was a good idea. As we drove, I noticed that among the many cell phone notifications was a message from Oliver's wife, Sarah. She thanked me for telling her the truth and left her email address. I forwarded the video to her and told her to feel free to contact me if she needed to talk. It's good for both of us. I packed quietly, careful not to wake Emma and Tim. Just as I was loading the truck, I picked up 2.22 caliber rifles. "What are you doing?" I explained, "You know I usually do target practice there." "Not this time," he said, taking the gun away from me. Jack jumps in the car, and we're off. About 2.5 hours after arriving at the cabin, I opened the house and built a fire in the fireplace. Jack and I took a walk in the woods, which made me feel slightly better, but not completely. William called to see how I was doing, and I told him where I was going. I told him that if his mom wanted to stay home, that was fine, but she needed to be gone by the time I got back. He agreed. When I got back from my walk, Jack was asleep by the fireplace, and I went out to chop some wood. It's a great workout and surprisingly therapeutic. With each axe fall, I alternated between picturing Olivia and Oliver's faces in my mind. I stayed there all weekend, until Monday. On Monday, I started making phone calls. The first thing is to call the office and let them know I'll be gone for a while, but if there's an emergency, they can contact me. Then I called the firm's usual lawyer, who recommended a divorce attorney. On Thursday, I have an appointment with an attorney. Then I called the bank and froze our joint account. Next came the credit cards. I canceled all of them and asked for new ones to be sent out. Being alone in the woods gave me some opportunity to think about what to do next. I find myself shaking again, questioning whether I really want to go down this road or try to save our marriage. When I got home, I found this forum and started reading other people's stories. These stories help a little, but not much. In the middle of the week, I went to the office and talked to my HR manager. We have a close professional relationship, but now that relationship is about to become more personal. I told her everything and asked what to do about their company. She advised me to talk to an attorney before taking any action. She asked me if I was going to get tested and recommended someone. She also said I should see a doctor for an STD test. I called these two and made an appointment for Thursday's checkup. On Thursday, I met with my current attorney. I showed her the video, and this time I could actually listen to it. She shook her head and said, "Why do people do such stupid things?" Turns out she has no tolerance for cheaters. Her husband cheated on her and tortured her so badly that she changed her practice and became a divorce lawyer. She assured me that everything would be fine, and I signed a contract with her. I asked if she should tell the wives and the boss's HR department, and she said we should wait. In the meantime, I had a meeting with Olivia. She wisely understood that I needed some space, so when I got home, she wasn't there. I've been sleeping on the couch because I can't stand to step into our bedroom. When I need to get something, I try to get as much as I can at once to minimize the number of times I have to go into that room. After that painful family meeting, I felt exhausted and needed some time alone. I decided to go to our cabin in the mountains for a few days. This place has always been my safe haven, and now I need it more than ever. I told Olivia I was going away for a few days, and she just nodded silently. I could tell she wanted to say something, but ultimately didn't. Maybe she's finally realized I need space. After a 3-hour drive, I arrived at the cabin. There was silence all around, only the rustling of leaves and the gurgling of a distant stream. I took a deep breath and felt the fresh mountain air fill my lungs. There's nothing here that reminds me of Olivia or our marriage, and that's exactly what I need right now. The first day, I just strolled through the neighborhood woods and let my thoughts flow freely. I thought back to our first date, my nerves when I asked her to marry me, our wedding, the moment our children were born. These memories, once so beautiful, now carry a bitter taste. The next day, I began to think seriously about my future. I pulled out my notebook and listed the pros and cons of staying in the marriage and opting for divorce. Looking at the lists, I realized that the reasons for staying were largely motivated by attachment to the past and fear of change. The grounds for divorce were more practical and forward-thinking. I no longer trusted her. I couldn't get rid of that image, and our relationship had been irreparably damaged. By the third day, I had made up my mind. Even though the decision was tearing me apart, I knew divorce was the best option. I can't continue to live a life of lies and betrayal. I deserve better. Upon returning to town, I immediately contacted my attorney, Sarah. I told her I had decided to move forward with the divorce proceedings. She didn't sound surprised. She just asked me if I was sure. I told her I'd never been more sure. Over the next few days, I was busy dealing with a variety of practical issues. I went to the bank and updated my personal account information, canceled our joint credit card, and started putting together a list of our joint assets. These chores keep me busy and give me a sense of control that I've been missing in recent weeks. Just as I was getting busy with these matters, William called to tell me that Olivia had moved out of his place. Apparently, she felt she was putting too much pressure on his and his wife's life. I sighed and asked where she had gone. William said she went home. I hung up and sat there for a few moments, not knowing how to react. I'm not ready to live under the same roof as her, but I can't kick her out either. Finally, I decided to go home and face reality. When I push open the door to my house, I see Olivia sitting in the living room. She looked up at me with hope and fear in her eyes. I didn't say anything, just nodded, then went straight upstairs to the study. That night I spent the night on the couch. Even when Olivia offered that she could sleep on the couch, I refused to go back to our bedroom. That room is like a wound to me now, and I'm not ready to face it. The next morning, I decided it was time to tackle the bedroom. I went to a furniture store and bought a brand new bed. When the delivery men arrived, I asked them to move the old beds into the yard. As they looked on in confusion, I took out a can of spray paint and wrote, "Wife cheated on me," in this bed, in big letters on the mattress. Then I had them lean the mattress against a tree down the street. Olivia sees the scene from the window, and her face instantly turns pale. She rushed out and pleaded with me not to do it. But I've made up my mind. I told her, "This bed represents your betrayal of our marriage. I don't want it in my sight again." Over the next few days, Olivia kept trying to talk to me in an attempt to salvage our relationship. She cries, apologizes, promises to change. But every time I see her, that horrible image comes to mind. I told her I needed time. I needed space. Things came to a head on Valentine's Day. I was in the kitchen preparing a simple dinner when Olivia walked in. She was wearing a dress that used to be my favorite and holding a bottle of red wine. She tried to get close to me, saying how much she missed the closeness between us. I took a step back and shook my head. Olivia, I said, the closeness between us was gone the moment you decided to betray me. Even if you were the last woman on earth, I would never touch you. Tears came to her eyes and she choked out, James, please. We're not making love. We're loving each other. Give me a chance to prove how much I love you. I looked at her coldly and said, we haven't really loved each other since you started sleeping with your boss. You betrayed me, our marriage vows, and our family. How can you still say the word love? Olivia dropped to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Watching her like this, a part of me wanted to comfort her, but a bigger part told me I couldn't be soft. I took a deep breath and then said the words I'd been considering for the past few days. Olivia, I think we should get a divorce. She looked up, fear in her eyes. No, James, please don't. I'll do anything. Really, anything. We can start over and I'll prove to you how much I love you and how much I regret what I've done. I shake my head. Olivia, this isn't about what you do or don't do. It's about trust, about respect, about the foundation of our marriage. You destroyed all of that. I don't think we can rebuild it. She jumped over and hugged my leg, crying harder. James, please give me a chance. We've been together for almost 30 years. Are we just going to let go of all those years? I gently removed her hand from my leg and knelt down to be at her level. It is because of these 30 years that your betrayal is all the more heartbreaking. Not only have you betrayed me now, but you've betrayed me for the last 30 years of loving you and trusting you. I don't think I can forgive that. I stood up and walked toward the door. Before I left the kitchen, I looked back at her one last time. I will contact an attorney and start preparing the divorce papers. I suggest you get a lawyer too. It won't be easy for either of us, but I think it's the best option. With that said, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving Olivia alone and crying. I knew that this decision would bring great pain, but I also knew that it was the only way I could truly begin to heal myself and find my way back in life. After that Valentine's Day, things got more tense between Olivia and me. We're under the same roof, but we're like two strangers. I tried to avoid her and stayed in my study or out working most of the time. I could see the pain and remorse in her eyes every time we accidentally bumped into each other, but I had made up my mind to end the marriage. The next morning, I contacted Sarah, my divorce attorney. She quickly set up a meeting and we began discussing the specifics of the divorce process. James, Sarah said, I need you to be clear about one thing. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Once we start the program, it's going to be hard to turn back. I took a deep breath, then said firmly, yes, I'm sure. This marriage is beyond repair. Sarah nodded and began to explain the next steps. We need to put together an inventory of our possessions, and I feel a wave of vertigo listening to all the legal jargon. Is this the end of a 29-year marriage? A bunch of cold legal documents and property division? When I got home, I decided I needed to tell my kids about my decision. I called William first. Son, I said, your mom and I are getting a divorce. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Then William whispered, I guess that would happen. Are you okay, Dad? His concern nearly brought me to tears. I'll be fine, I said. It'll just take some time. Then I called Emma. Her reaction was even more intense. Dad, you can't just give up. She cried. You've been together for so many years. Can't you forgive Mom? I patiently explained, Emma, baby, it's not just about forgiveness. Once trust is broken, it's hard to rebuild. Your mom and I both need to move on. After hanging up, I felt exhausted. I know that this decision not only affects Olivia and I, but the entire family. But I also know that continuing to live in lies and betrayal will only make everyone miserable. The next day, I started organizing our possessions. Our house, our savings, my company, Olivia's pension. I felt a pang of heartache as I looked at everything we'd accumulated together over the years. Each of these possessions held memories we shared, and now they were to be coldly divided. It was while I was busy with these matters that Olivia came to talk to me. "James," she said softly, "I know I'm not in a position to ask for anything, but I want to know, is there really no way to salvage this?" I looked up at her and saw the tears and despair in her eyes. There was a time when that look would have softened my heart, but now I just feel numb. "Olivia," I said calmly, "we've already discussed this. Divorce is the best thing for us to do for each other." She nodded, tears running quietly down her cheeks. "I understand. I just want you to know that I'm really sorry. I'd do anything to save our marriage if I could." I sighed. "I know you regret it, Olivia, but there are some things that once done can't be undone. We all need to accept that reality and move on." She didn't say anything else, just turned and left the room. Watching her back, I felt a wave of mixed emotions rush over me. Sadness, anger, regret, and a touch of unnameable relief. That night, I sat alone in my backyard, staring at the stars. I think about our first date, the first tree we planted in this backyard, the countless birthdays and holidays we've celebrated here. Now, all those good memories are tainted by that horrible image. I pulled out my phone and looked through our old pictures. We seemed so happy and hopeful when we were young. We envisioned a bright future and believed that our love could conquer all. Who would have thought that after 29 years, we would come to this? Tears streamed down my face without my realizing it. I allowed myself to cry for the love that was gone, for the broken promises, for the happy family that we had been. I know that the decision was the right one, but it still kills me. The next morning I woke up feeling much better. Despite the pain that still filled my heart, I knew I needed to be strong, not only for myself, but for my children as well. I decided to focus on work and self-improvement, trying to find balance and meaning in this new phase of my life. I started exercising daily, picked up my guitar again, which I had put down years ago, and even signed up for a cooking class. These activities helped me to divert my attention and feel like I'm settling in. Meanwhile, the divorce process is steadily progressing. Olivia and I communicated through our attorneys to discuss property division and other details. Although the process wasn't pleasant, we were all doing our best to stay sane and calm. Sometimes, especially late at night, I would question my decisions. I would wonder if we could rebuild the relationship if given a second chance. But every time that thought comes up, that horrible image resurfaces in my mind, reminding me why we've come this far. My friend Daniel has been my biggest support during this difficult process. He comes to see me often and talks to me, sometimes just quietly. His wife Terry also used to make me delicious meals and make sure I took care of myself. One night Daniel asked me, "James, do you regret it?" I thought about it for a moment and then replied, "I regret that things turned out the way they did. I regret that we couldn't save the marriage. But I don't regret my decision. Sometimes loving someone means learning to let go." Daniel tapped me on the shoulder and said nothing, but I know that he understands how I feel. As time went on, I began to feel a strange calm. While the pain is still there, it is no longer as sharp as it was in the beginning. I have come to believe that perhaps at the end of this journey, a new beginning, new possibilities await me. When the lawyer finally served me with the divorce papers, I stared at them for a long time. This is it, I thought to myself. 29 years of marriage is about to end with one of my signatures. I picked up the pen, took a deep breath, and then signed my name to the document. At that moment, I felt both relief and sadness. One chapter is over, but I know that a new one is about to begin. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that no matter what happens, I will be stronger. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.